Let's start things off with the New York Knicks here. What do you make of this squad?
So the reason we have the Knicks as one of the most active teams this offseason is because there's such a wide array of things that they could do. They have some in-house free agents that they need to deal with in Enes Kanter and Michael Beasley. They have the new head coach coming in at David Fizdale. They have 3 quality young guards in Trey Burke, Emmanuel Mudiay, as well as Franky Smokes, or Frank Ntilikina as he's more commonly known. So when it comes to the Knicks, there's a lot of different directions they could go. I think that they have to kind of find a center point for what they want to build around. And also a lot of it has to do with the future of Kristaps Porzingis. So it just I'm a little worried about the Knicks. I see that cap space spot of $21 million next season, and it's just not really enough to get a Paul George or a LeBron James, but they are still open enough to get a good player in the draft and then pick up a couple quality free agents.
All right, Harris, let's get into some rumors around the New York Knicks, and we'll start things off with Collin Sexton at the number 9 overall pick. What do you make of this?
Well, this was an interesting rumor to me because they drafted Frank Ntilikina last year. They already traded for Emmanuel Mudiay, and they picked up Trey Burke during the middle of the season. He was great for the last half of the season. So we're only going to give this one 2 heads, as we will for any team that's connected with a college prospect. So Sexton, obviously the Alabama point guard, who is just a ferocious competitor, a great guy to watch on the court.
He's a gamer.
Has all the ability in the world. Absolutely. He's a gamer. He's a baller. He's a playmaker. No, he's
all the superlatives.
Exactly. He's a great player. I think that he'd be a good fit in New York. But according to reports, the Knicks will only take him if he's better than the current point guards that they have. Now, they will make that interpretation after Fizdale gets his hand on some of the prospects before the draft and starts to talk to him. He's a good player, but is he better right now than Franky Smokes, Trey Burke, or Emmanuel Mudiay? I think so. I think that if you draft him, he ends up being your starting point guard on day 1, and you move Trey Burke to the 2, and you have Mudiay and Ntilikina coming in to bring some versatility and length off the bench. I think that Sexton would be a perfect fit in New York. He just would bring so much energy to the Garden and a lot of fun as well. He'd be a good fit in that lineup. He's a really good player. I think he's a better shooter than people give him credit for. He's not great, but I think he has room to improve. But you give him to David Fizdale, and I think they're going to do some great things.
Well, that's the argument, Harris. Like, Knicks fans are getting mad because a lot of people are projecting point guards and guards to the Knicks here via the draft, especially in the high picks, and everybody's saying, well, there's no need for a PG. So what do you make of this?
For me, it really comes down to how much do you trust Frank Ntilikina as your starting point guard, and that's actually one of our rumors that we'll get to in a little bit. The Knicks aren't 100% on board with him being the leader of their offense, and if you're going to be a point guard in the modern-day NBA, you have to run the offense. This is across the board. We are currently in one of the greatest generations of NBA point guards that we have ever seen. And with that kind of generation comes a lot of responsibility. I mean, Kyrie Irving with the Celtics ran the offense when he went out. Kyle Lowry, obviously, with the Raptors. James Harden / Chris Paul with the Rockets. Steph Curry with the Warriors. John Wall with the Wizards. I mean, you can just keep going on and on with this. I mean, Christ, the Bucks moved Giannis to point guard so he could run the offense. That's how the modern-day offense runs. So they're worried if Frank Ntilikina can actually carry that burden.
All right, let's get to rumor number 2 here about the Knicks. Mikal Bridges, perhaps, going on over to Madison Square.
Ironically, with how many, there isn't a ton of high-end talent in this draft. So Mikal Bridges, arguably, is probably the biggest name to come out in this year's draft. We've been hearing about him for 2 years now. A great player at Michigan State, one of the top recruits coming out of high school 2 years ago, came back for a second year at Michigan State in hopes of getting the title. That didn't happen. And if you're the Knicks, Mikal Bridges would be a great fit for you. He has a lot of upside, as we see there. The team is very interested in his large upside. I think he's still a bit raw, but he fills a good need for them. He'd come in and would get instant minutes at the starting small forward position. I think that his shooting needs a little bit of work, but he has length, he has size. He's a modern-day tweener. But the good news is that in 2018 in the NBA, tweeners are good. You want tweeners because they can play multiple positions and they can, most importantly, defend multiple positions. I think that his scoring will translate to the NBA. I think his rebounding will as well. I think he has the size to cover 2, maybe 3 positions on the court at any times. You can go small and put him at the 4. You can go big and put him at the 2, which probably won't end up happening. But I think if Bridges can get his jump shot in order, the Knicks are going to have an amazing, amazing lineup, especially with him at the 3.
All right, so 2 crying Jordans on that, firmly in the rumor category. How about the Knicks and Mikal Bridges there? What do you think?
We got both Bridges possibly going to the Knicks again.
Covered.
We're only going to give this one 2 heads as well. He would be a safe pick for the Knicks. A quintessential 3-and-D player, can defend 2 positions. He'd be a good fit next to Tim Hardaway Jr., who is a very similar player to Mikal Bridges in a lot of ways. You have the shooting ability from outside the arc. You have the defense. You have the rebounding ability. Now I just hope that Mikal Bridges doesn't have Giannis jump over him to dunk on him. But I like Bridges. I think that Mikal would be a good fit with the Knicks. I like Miles as a higher upside player more, but if the Knicks are just looking for a safe pick, Mikal would be that guy.
All right, be sure to let us know who you think the Knicks should draft at number 9 overall. Let's get to rumor number 4 on the list. Are the Knicks going to go best player available, Harris? Is that going to be the strategy?
Well, I'm going to give this one 4 heads simply because the GM of the Knicks, Scott Perry, literally said, and I quote, "We are going to take the best player available." Verbatim, he said they're going to take the best player available.
So 4 heads.
That is 4 heads. Now, I think that's a little bit of a loaded statement because, as we mentioned before, it really depends on how they rank some of these guards.
Well, it seems like a cookie-cutter statement, too.
It is, because it really depends who's still on the board, because what do you do if Collin Sexton and Miles Bridges are still on the board? Do you go with the forward or do you go with the high-level guard? It really depends on what David Fizdale, the new head coach that they just hired, thinks of the roster. Does he want that wing player, or does he want to find a Collin Sexton, maybe a Mike Conley-esque player at the point guard position? They can go a lot of different players. So the best player available comment is a loaded comment.
It's a Bill Belichickian statement.
It is. And if you look at our big board here for the Knicks, it can literally mean anything. Do they take Trae Young to add a little bit of fire and excitement to Madison Square Garden? Do they go with a safe pick and Wendell Carter Jr. to bring a little defense down low to combo with Kristaps? I mean, they can go so many different directions. We don't know who the best player on their board is going to be. So again, take it with a grain of salt until the draft.
All right, let's go to rumor number 5 here on the list about the Knicks.
This is fun.
Kristaps doing a little ACL rehab in Latvia. Harris, what do you think?
Fake news.
Ooh.
He apparently lied to the Knicks. He told them that he was going to be in Latvia doing his ACL rehab, and apparently he's in Spain working out with Real Madrid instead. He's been conducting his rehab at their rehab medical facility, and I want to make this clear for the people at home. When I say Real Madrid, yes, that is the same sports organization as Real Madrid, the soccer team. This is just the basketball team. They have a soccer team and a basketball team. He is not working out with Cristiano Ronaldo. He is working out with the Real Madrid basketball team, and apparently his rehab is at a quote-unquote jaw-dropping rate. There were a lot of rumors that he might not be ready for the start of the NBA season, and Kristaps is very clearly doing whatever he possibly can to make sure that he is back for Game 1. I think he's going to end up coming back. I think it's good that he's currently in Spain. He's back in a familiar kind of environment. He obviously played in Spain before he came to the NBA, so this is big for Kristaps. I think he also might be trying to do a little recruiting for Luka, but Luka's not going to be on the board at number 9.
All right, let's go to number 6 here for the Knicks rumors. Are they not confident in Franky Smokes, as they call him?
Yes, and this is something that we mentioned before. We're going to give this one 2 heads. This is coming from the New York Post, and this is a reference also back to them maybe taking a high-level guard at the number 9 overall pick. The Knicks took Ntilikina last year, number 8 overall, but you got to remember, that was with a much different front office and a different head coach, and the Knicks as a whole are worried about his overall penetrating ability as a point guard. You got to be able to get to the rim, and you need to be able to finish in the modern-day NBA. It's not always about three-point shooting. It's always still been about getting to the bucket. And I think with them, they're a little worried that he's too defensively oriented as an overall player. David Fizdale did say during his opening press conference that he's excited about his talent, but they do have a lot of work to do. Fizdale is a great coach, and I think he can do a lot of interesting things with Franky. He's a very similar player in a lot of ways to Mike Conley, especially with his defensive ability and his length, but he's got to improve on the offensive side of the board. Only 6 points per game is just not what they are expecting out of him. But I do need to point this out. He was one of the best rookie defenders in all of basketball last year. Like, so good that even LeBron called out how good he was on defense. So they have a lot of different directions they could go with that pick, but as of right now, I wonder if they go point guard just because they aren't confident enough in Frank.
All right, there you go. The rumors roundup for the New York Knicks.